So, a fresh new week has arrived, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every week, I post an episode of the series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week, based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, there has been a lot unfolding across the NBA, with plenty of surprises popping up, so we definitely have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now. So if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from JJ, and he says that the Cleveland Cavaliers are his pick to win the finals this season. We're only a few weeks into the new year, but already there have been some significant developments that we simply cannot ignore. After a pretty active summer where plenty of teams around the Cavaliers made moves to improve themselves, those teams were typically at the forefront of conversations about being title favorites in the Eastern Conference as contenders, with the Celtics being the defending champions, the Knicks being the most aggressive team of the offseason, and the 76ers making one of the biggest splashes in free agency. The Cavaliers, meanwhile, took a business-as-usual route this summer and flew way under the radar in doing so. The Cavaliers, for the last 2 years, have been one of the better teams in the East, but were simultaneously not really in the real contender tier either, being legitimately good, but not quite great. Their defensive foundation was as strong as anybody's, but offensively, they were much more middle of the pack, and after acquiring Donovan Mitchell 2 years ago, there were obvious growing pains with the fit between him and Darius Garland in the team's backcourt. The year before Mitchell arrived, Garland was an all-star, but his production trended in the wrong direction each of the last 2 years with Mitchell, and that led to some trade rumors popping up about the Cavaliers potentially shipping Garland out, but that never happened. The team held firm in their belief in those two figuring it out, and now they are reaping the rewards for it. The key to maximizing Garland's talent and potential has always been to get him an environment where he feels that he can comfortably play freely, because he's an incredibly creative and crafty guard with a knack for making plays both for himself and others. There have been plenty of times over the last 2 seasons where he just looked visibly uncomfortable trying to find his place in the offense, not wanting to step on Donovan Mitchell's toes, and trying to maneuver when he should be in attack mode versus when he should be deferring, and his lack of confidence was clear. But this season, he's clearly in a much better space mentally, and his reemergence has been the biggest reason why the Cavs look like real title threats right now. He's back scoring over 20 points per game, incredibly efficiently might I add, making 52% of his shots and 48% of his threes. The offense is consistently starting with him initiating things. And with his playmaking back at the forefront, the Cavaliers actually have the #1 ranked offense in the NBA right now, and are off to an undefeated 10-0 start. With the Knicks not quite looking as good as advertised, the Bucks and 76ers off to disastrous starts, and the Celtics already losing to the Cavaliers this season, I absolutely think the Cavs need to be taken seriously moving forward as title contenders, and Darius Garland is the key to a lot of it. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Tio, and he says that Jonathan Kuminga would be a top 20 player if he was on a different team because the Warriors system holds him back. I have to admit that I'm definitely a believer in Kuminga as a talent, and this offseason he was my pick to win the Most Improved Player award because in theory he should have been in the perfect situation to break out, so naturally I'm incredibly disappointed with the way that the season has gone for him thus far. Coming into the year, the Warriors lost Klay Thompson in free agency, and there was a clear opening for guys to step into the #2 role offensively, and after a bit of emergence last season, Kuminga was a prime candidate to be the one to do that, yet his role and usage has somehow decreased this year from last year. Simply put, the Warriors Warriors are a team that need players comfortable being put in roles where they can fire up a high volume of threes and keep up with the pace at which these looks are generated, and as the original take states, that's just not Kuminga's game. It's why Buddy Hield is looking like a completely rejuvenated player in the Warriors system after a few years trending in the wrong direction, looking previously washed at times, because the Warriors system is a perfect fit for his three-point barrage. Kuminga, on the other hand, is a supreme athlete who prefers doing his work around the basket, flying high for dunks and finishing through contact. He's improved as a post scorer, and he cuts well too, but his biggest weakness has always been his inconsistent jumper and the fact that he doesn't trust it enough to shoot more than 2 or 3 threes per game. Kuminga was moved to the bench just 3 games into the season, and is admittedly playing much better in their 6th-man role, but like the original poster here, I can't help but wonder how much better he would be in a system that didn't try to force him to be something he's not. All of this along with the fact that the Warriors never gave Kuminga a contract extension, making him a free agent after this season concludes, makes him a prime trade candidate before the year ends. So ultimately, I think we may see those wonders come into fruition. It's way too ambitious to call him a top 20 talent like the original take did here, but improvement would seem pretty likely. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Mr. NBA, and he says that Payton Pritchard is this year's 6th man of the year for sure. Pritchard is now in his 5th season in the league, and for most of the early part of his career, he struggled to find a consistent role on a Celtics team that was very much in win-now title contending mode. Last season was the first year where he managed to earn more of a consistent role in the team's rotation as someone who came in off the bench and offered a little bit more shot creation and three-point shooting to the tune of a little over 9 points per game. But with all of the mouths to feed in Boston, it was always going to be difficult to stand out from the crowd. All of that is actually why what he's doing this season is all the more impressive. This year, Pritchard has fully embraced being a spark plug off the Celtics bench, coming in and immediately starting to fire away from 3 confidently. He's scoring over 16 points per game, knocking down 41% of his threes, while taking 9.2 3-point attempts per game, which, for reference, is the 9th most 3-point attempts per game in the entire NBA so far this year, so he wastes no time when he subs in. In regards to the 6th man of the year race, it may be early, but it's already looking like a 2-man race between him and Buddy Hield of the Warriors. Hield is actually the leading bench scorer in the NBA this year, putting up about 19 points per game on even more insane shooting efficiency, making 51% of his shots and 49% of his threes. So at the moment, I would have to say that Buddy is in the top spot for this award, but over the course of the whole season, I think I still would lean towards Pritchard, just because what we've seen from Hield over the last few years tells us that he is going to have ridiculous hot stretches like this, but he's also inevitably going to cool off and be a bit more inconsistent. I trust Pritchard's creativity on the ball much more long term, so ultimately I agree with this take here actually. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.